T, how we doing?
I'm excited for our guest today. We've had a few days away from the pod recording, so I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, it is good to be back. Good to be back in the routine. And I'm excited for our guest as well. He's a good friend and a mentor to us all.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome back to Sideline Ascent. I'm Taryn Sheehan, former Division I coach turned professor and mom.
And I'm Mike Marich, former athletic director, coach, mentor, and someone who believes the people shaping athletes' lives deserve real support too.
Sideline Ascent is brought to you by Mindset Curated and Morgan Athletics, two organizations committed to elevating coaches and the athletes they serve. All right, Mike, you're in the hot seat today. Hot take, trash take. Are secondary schools now the last real place where athletes learn emotional intelligence because college sports have basically turned into pros?
Ooh. That's a good one. I'm going to go trash take. Here's why. While, former boarding school coach and athletic director, and I know the value there and developing people in that 24/7 environment, developing student athletes. What we've heard, both within our guests, and I think even I saw something on Instagram the other day with Oregon football coach Dan Lanning. I think he makes it a priority, I think I saw, to make sure that he has a connection point with every one of his players every single day out at practice, right? So using that as a framework, and the common theme that we've heard from our guests so far has been using that love as the operating system. I think it can happen, and it should happen. Being that servant leader, or having the players know who you are as a person, and what you care about, and you getting to know what they are and what drives them and who they are. All those things are so important for student athlete growth and development. I think it's a challenge that all college level and high school administrators should take on. How do we make our programs centers of social and emotional growth? It's beyond wins and losses, as you and I both know. But thinking that Dan Lanning can do that to make that connection, if that can happen in Oregon in that environment, it can happen anywhere. So I'm going to go trash take.
I love that. I will go down fighting with our last guest that said, academics and athletics still belong hand in hand as really providing those lessons and resources and really developing our student athletes into being better human beings. So I'm with you. I agree with you, and really hope that we can continue developing student athletes into incredible human beings in the college level too.
Let's do it. And welcome back to Sideline Ascent. Our guest today is Andy Dunn, Director of Athletics and Afternoon Program at the Taft School. Andy spent a decade at Yale, most recently as Senior Associate Director of overseeing varsity sports, scheduling, travel, and NCAA compliance before making the jump to lead all of Taft's afternoon programming. He spent his whole career thinking about how to build people who build athletes, and now he's doing it in one of the more unique environments of all education, a boarding school. I've had the pleasure of working with Andy within our NEPSAC group on the executive team there, and it's great to have you here with us today. So welcome, Andy Dunn.
Thanks, Mike.
Andy, we'll start off with our opening segment called The Face Off, an homage to my playing career. Three quick questions. Fast answers, don't overthink them, nothing too challenging. But favorite sports movie of all time?
Major League. It's not even a question. It's been my favorite movie since I was like 5 years old. We can debate whether that's acceptable, that I liked it when I was 5, but it is. It's not only my favorite sports movie, it's my favorite movie of all time.
Quotable. Willie Mays Hayes, undefeated. All right. What would your walkout song be?
Walkout song. That's a really good question. I would say right now I'm gonna pay the homage to my West Virginia roots. I went to grad school in West Virginia. It's Take Me Old Country Roads, baby.
Ooh.
Absolutely. Great resurgence this spring and summer for country roads.
All of America now loves Take Me Home Country Roads.
I mean, if they didn't before, they definitely love it now. All right. Last one. What athlete's poster hung on your wall if you had an athlete's poster hanging on your wall growing up?
It was Don Mattingly. I grew up huge Yankee fan, and anybody who's a Yankee fan in the late 80s, early 90s, it was Don Mattingly was your guy. So he was my favorite player growing up.
Awesome. Donnie Baseball. Good stuff. T, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, Andy. So let's start with your path. You go from Cornell in the Auburn Double Days to Minnesota, to a decade at Yale, where you were my boss for a little bit, to now running the entire afternoon program at Taft. What pulled you deeper into the administration route? And when did you realize that this side business of building people, the systems, not just logistics, running games, where was it that you wanted to make your most impact?
So my first job out of grad school, a kid from upstate New York, decided I was going to give Minnesota winters a try. I thought I was pretty tough coming from upstate New York and thought Minnesota would be a piece of cake. I got humbled really quick when it came to the weather, but it was an amazing 5 years that I spent out there at the University of Minnesota. I was running athletic events, running 200 events a year between our competitions at Minnesota and state high school tournaments that we held on campus, concerts, all those things. And it's something that's a huge thrill when you're a 20-something-year-old kid running a 50,000 seat football stadium and enjoying that life. But as I grew into the job, I realized that I wanted to have more connection with kids and more connections with the athletes and students. So I used my event background to get my foot in the door at Yale. I came as an assistant AD in varsity sports and was in charge of still running events, but got to do a little bit more travel, administrative work. That turned 10 years into where I left Yale as being a senior associate AD. And as I grew and as I took on sport administrator roles and stuff like that, as you said, it became so much more about the kids. And at Yale, it was so much about these incredible humans who were passionate about everything they were doing, passionate about athletics, passionate about academics, passionate about being, as I say all the time here at Taft, being the best version of themselves in everything they do. And so was there for 10 years, got to the point that I was looking to run my own shop. I wanted to be an athletic director. You name the high academic D1, D3 school in the Northeast, I probably applied for their AD job. But I got a call from a search firm and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about boarding school?" And I was like, "No, I haven't, quite honestly. I'm a public school kid from upstate New York, had never thought about boarding school. I knew they existed because I had been at Yale for 10 years, but I said I would listen to it." And as I went through the process here at Taft, what I found was that the community and the kids, more importantly, are the same type of kid that I was working with at Yale. Those same kids who are driven about doing everything to the best of their ability, academics, athletics, being good community members. And what I found is that 14 to 19-year-old kids truly still need adults in their lives and are looking for mentorship and are looking for people who want to help them grow and be who they ultimately want to be. So it's been a long run to get here, but I think I'm finally in a place where I'm meant to be, where I can truly help kids and help them grow into the incredible humans that they are once they leave our campus.
Andy, what made you realize that the athletes were a really important part of your job? It was very obvious to us as coaches under you how much you cared about our athletes. And in the conversations we had, every decision that we had was about what was best for our student athletes.
Yeah.
That is actually unique. Not every administrator works like that. And it was so unique in the sense that our athletes were shocked when you came to events. They were shocked that you knew their name, you knew who they were, you even knew what their majors were. Was there a mentor of yours that made that really important to you or was able to showcase that? Or where did you pick that up? Because I feel that there's a little bit more of a dying art in administration. There's becoming this more of a separation of the admins are over here and the coaches are on the front lines handling everything themselves. So what for you made you realize that I need to cross that barrier and have my, roll up my sleeves and be in the mud with the coaches?
Yeah, I think it's two people really who have influenced me. First is my stepdad was a public school, high school AD growing up. He was the AD in our local school district, and that is how he did his job, almost to a fault. Our family was lucky enough to have kids who needed a place to go to eat dinner. They would come and eat dinner at our table. If there was a kid in the school district who needed a pair of shoes and they couldn't afford one, my parents were probably buying it for them. And so those are the mentors that I grew up in, who were providing that to kids, and they understood that ultimately, like, the easy answer is none of us have a job if it isn't for kids who want to play sports. So you got to remember that. You got to remember why we are here and why we do what we do. And then when I got to Yale, anybody who's worked for Tom Beckett knows that, like, he is a one of one when it comes to human beings. And he made it very clear that Yale athletics was about the kids and about the student athletes, and that is what we were showing up for work every day. And when the athletic director is showing up to work every day at a Division I institution, and he knows every one of the 900 kids, and he knows their parents, and he knows their names, and he knows where they are, it whether he would say it or not, it became the expectation for me, like, I've got to do that too. If my boss has taken the time to do it for all 900 kids, I got to at least do it for the programs that I'm in charge of. And I think what you'll find is when you give all of yourself to something and you give all yourself to people, like, then it becomes worthwhile. It becomes worthwhile waking up in the morning and doing what you do, because, like, it actually matters. It's not just a job. It's about the people that you're surrounding yourself with.
We've heard some coaches talk just about that, of giving their all to the players. How do you refresh yourself, making sure that you have enough in the tank to be that, keep pouring into those in your charge?
I am lucky to have a great support system at home. I think everyone will tell you that behind every good administrator in athletics is probably a better spouse at home. And I am not any different there. I am incredibly lucky to have a wife who understands what is asked of me. We've been together since my days in Minnesota, so she's grown along with me, and our relationship has grown along as these happen. But I think the nice thing, as I've found my transition here to boarding school, is that my professional life and my personal life aren't necessarily separate, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Me going to work doesn't mean dad's going away from my 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
If you come on a Saturday to Taft, anywhere where there's games, you're probably going to see the 3 Dunn kids running around. And that's just, they love it as much as I do. They know the kids, they cheer for 'em. And I think, like, having that family unit at home, that whether you have a good day or a bad day, you know they're going to love you. That's always really easy to come home to. But I think having a family that understands, and you don't feel like you have to pick between your job and your home life, that's really helpful. But also just knowing that at the end of the day, like, it is a job. And I always try to remind myself that the important people are my wife and kids. And I'm always going to put them first. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to work really, really hard for Taft and really, really hard for our coaches and student athletes. But at the end of the day, it's the 4 people at home that really matter. And they're the ones who I need to measure what I'm doing against.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think all 3 of us could sit here and talk about the importance of our spouses at home and the success that we have. And maybe that's a segment for some coaches, is the importance of your spouse. But Andy, I was going to save maybe some of this for later, but you sort of touched on it now. Modeling what it means to have balance within your athletic department, not just as a male coach, not just as an administrator, but also modeling that so all your coaches can see it. I think we hear this phrase a lot in athletics: oh, we're a family. And that is sometimes really, really hard to believe when wins and losses become more important. That's no longer a family, that's a business. So for you modeling too, bringing your kids and creating an environment where that is actually encouraged and you're doing that yourself is really important, because I think there's a lot of circumstances where we lose female coaches because that environment is not modeled and it is not encouraged. And I will always remember sitting in a call with you and some of the other males on staff, and I'm eternally grateful for. There was something about kids and one of the guys stood up and said, well, I'm going to bring my kids. That's really important. And you were very supportive of that decision and backed that. And I had never, as a female coach, seen that before. It was kind of, one, you don't ask. Two, that's your problem and you figure it out. And so to see the men that I was surrounded with as the only female modeling that was one of the most incredible, empowering things. It's one thing to talk to other female coaches about it, but it's another level of support when the men around you are also modeling that and being supportive of their families being around on a consistent basis when we're working 7 days a week.
I say this a lot to people, and I hope that it comes through in my actions, that I care more about you as a person than I do you as an employer, you as a coach. And I think the understanding of the people that you work with and understanding what drives them is ultimately where you're going to build those relationships with people. And that's different with each person, but you need to know, in your case, Taryn, like, I know how important your family is to you. And I know that I'm not going to get the best version of Taryn if I'm not thinking about Taryn the mom and Taryn the wife. And so you have to take that into account, and you have to make sure that people can fill their cups from all angles. And it can't just be the ask of this is what the job needs, because you don't get the best out of people if you do that.
Yeah, but you also realize how incredibly competitive I am in that sense too, and balancing out that side of it. So it's not one or the other. There can be both if it's done in the right way.
Andy, talk to us a little bit, for those that don't know, like just what it means to coach and be an administrator at a boarding school.
Yeah, I think it's in some ways the easiest job there is, because you truly get to know these kids. And as I said, like, you can't wake up in the morning and get really motivated to work with kids that you know every aspect of their life. Like, you probably need to find something else you want to do. I say all the time that I thought I had relationships with kids when I was at Yale. And then I came to Taft and I realized how much deeper they can, because you do see them in every aspect of their life. You see them as athletes, you see them as students. Like, for those of you who haven't been lucky enough to do dorm duty, like, it's I always joke, people are like, oh, you have to do dorm duty. And I'm like, at the end of the day, if me hanging out in an evening with a bunch of upper school boys watching basketball on a TV is like the hardest thing I do in my day, then, like, again, I'm probably not in the right place. But I think dorm duty is one of those things. And I love it when students stop by and talk, because that's when you're in their home. And that's when you see the most open they're ever going to be about their lives, about their aspirations, about, their hangups, what's going on. And I think that, in lieu of their parents being here, they're craving adults who they can talk to about stuff like that. And that opens up a whole new world as a coach for your ability to connect with kids. And I think, the one thing that I hear from all of our coaches here, some of who have made the transition from college, is we are in the athlete production business, right? Like, we're in the business of helping them be the people they want to be and ultimately get to where they want to go. And that becomes a lot more fulfilling sometimes for people than trying to convince them to come to you. And you get to be in the position where you're truly listening to a student and listening to their parents and trying to figure out what's best for this kid, and being able to be, in a lot of ways, as there's so many voices in youth sports right now, you get to be the truthful one. You get to be the one who's telling families the reality of their son's or daughter's experience and where they best fit and all those things. And it's a really, really amazing bond that coaches get to build with kids here. And I think it's one that you see it every time alumni weekend comes along here at Taft. The kids flock to their coaches. They want to see them. They want to know everything about their family. They want to see how their kids are growing, all of those things. And, like, it's funny to think about, like, all the kids who were, like, coming back for their 10-year reunion, and they're talking about their coach's kids, and they're like, you were 2 years old when I was here. Now you're 12, and this is incredible. And, like, they truly buy into their life here. And it's one of the more special relationships I've ever seen when it comes to a athlete and their coach.
Yeah. I remember having my kids have the best role models in the world right there. And, we had players that were babysitters of ours and that type of stuff when they were really little. But the 10-year reunion coming back, when they don't talk about games, but they talk about family. And they talk about, the impact that you've had. It's so special and it's unique. I don't think it's overly unique to coaches, but the boarding school, because of that proximity that you're talking about, the dorm duty on Tuesday night, the dining hall, you get to see them in this 24/7 environment.
Yeah, and you get to be a role model for them in every
Yeah.
aspect of life. Like,
Yeah.
and it wasn't something that dawned on me right when I took this job, but I'm showing kids what my values are as a husband and as a father. And I hope that some of that rubs off on them as
Yeah.
they enter into their relationships and their families of what's important. Sometimes being a disciplinarian, right? Like you have to be sometimes you have to have those conversations, and they're tough conversations with kids, but I can always go back to it. You see me having these conversations with my own kids. You see me having the conversation in the dining hall with my kid about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's something that's actually truly important to me, because I'm trying to give this same lesson to my own child that I'm giving to you. So my hope is that resonates for kids, that they realize that, like, this isn't just Mr. Dunn enforcing a rule. This is something that's truly important to me as a human, and how I think people should develop and grow and ultimately treat people.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah. I think that really brings up the importance and how sacred it should be to be a coach, how important your impact can be on a student's lives. And unfortunately, we see too many times the damage that is done from not going about coaching the right way. So for you as an administrator, what are the things that you look for to find the right individuals to mentor and guide and lead these people about? Or there's a lot of theories out there of coaching and what it means, but talk to us about from like actionable steps. If you're going through the hiring process, whether it's for the boarding school or do you handle it differently for the collegiate environment, what are the things that you look for that go beyond just anybody can put together a great resume with wins and losses, whether they actually were a part of that or not? It's easy to doctor that up and make it look really good, but it's another thing to truly develop human beings. So how do you search through that?
I mean, it's funny talking to you because you went through this process with me.
I did.
I can guarantee you, in that process, I probably didn't ask you a single question about what a practice is going to look
We
like,
did not.
what your philosophy is in terms of training, periodization schedules, anything like that. Because quite honestly, like, that is a dime a dozen for people. Like, X's and O's can be learned on YouTube right now.
Yep.
Like, it's not something that is, for me, driving what's going to make a really good coach. For me, it's, do people believe in you? Are you going to be able to get, especially for this age group of 14 to 19-year-old kids, are you going to be able to get them to believe in the process rather than the outcome? Because especially in our world, like, we are so outcome driven. We're about, where are you going to college? What's your next step? What are you doing? And what I'm looking for is someone who's going to make the kids understand that if you're not doing the process every day, that outcome isn't going to come. And that's not just about you, what you're doing on the field. That's the person you are. That's how you treat your peers. That's all of those things. And so that is what more I'm looking for as I'm interviewing a coach, is like, it sounds cliche, but are you a good human? Are you someone that, if I'm sending my kid to Taft, am I going to trust my kid with you? Because that, as we were talking about earlier, like, a coach here at Taft is the most important person in their life. And that 9 times out of 10 becomes true for our varsity athletes. And so in that, we need to find people that are going to be able to be trusted with young people. And it's not really any different in college. Like, the people who are successful aren't necessarily the ones who are going to be the best X's and O's coaches. They're the ones who can connect with people and get them to believe in what's being asked them to do. Can you get someone to play a role on a team? Can you get them to believe that doing that extra work is going to be beneficial? Can you get them to believe that the whole is better than the single person? And all of those things become so much more important. And Taryn, like, for you, that's what jumped out. And you were able to take a group of individuals in cross country, like For them, it's who can get to the finish line fastest. And you made a team out of it, and you made people who truly are bought into each other. And that is evidence of what makes people successful.
Yeah, before I became an AD, I became the head boys lacrosse coach at Gunn, and I'll never forget our head of school at the time, your current boss, when he offered me the job. I said, "What are your goals of the program?" And he said, "I'm hiring you to develop young men." And that was for the boys lacrosse team. It stays with me today as I think about it. It wasn't about wins and losses. It wasn't about titles or anything like that. It was just developing the people in my charge. It put the spotlight right on it. This is what you have to do. You have to develop those that are around you. And then I took that into the AD chair as well, of looking to develop coaches. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about, how do you develop the coaches around you in your charge?
We were talking about it. It's really a case by case scenario. It's figuring out what each person needs, what drives them, where they're going to see wins in life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and coaches are different, especially in boarding schools. Like, yeah, Mike, you said it, like, wins and losses is something that matters to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to understand, if there's a coach whose wins and losses matter to you, how do you support them in that? How do you support them in resources, but also growth, that like they're gonna be able to feel like the hard work they're putting in is valuable? And some of that comes from, do you have a happy culture, and are kids happy to show up to practice, and are they doing that? Then you support them in that. But if it's a coach who's like, listen, I'm gonna be up all night if I lose a game, then like you need to be mindful of that too. It's always, for me, about showing up. And I think that's what is the most important thing. It's, being available, my door open. Taryn can tell you, like, sometimes to my own detriment, my phone is usually near me. I will always answer a text, or I will always pick up a phone call. And I think that matters. It's one thing that I learned from Tom Beckett, where he said, he had a saying, is that, you know, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. I think it comes from Theodore Roosevelt. And that's now on my email signature here at Taft, because I think it truly matters. Like, showing people that you care, showing people that you understand what they're going through, then you're able to have conversations and impart wisdom and all of those things. Because, once you've built a bond with them and they know that you're in it with them, then it becomes easy. And I think well, nothing's ever easy, but it becomes easy to work together for the ultimate goal.
I think there's some key phrases there that really embody what it means to be a transformational leader. It's not just being at the top and making decisions and passing down orders. It's knowing you care, being supportive. And sometimes you are going to tell your coaches no. You told us no a few times, but we knew you cared. And it wasn't always a no. It's, well, how can we figure this out another way? Or where's another resource in which we can look? And that goes so much farther when you know the people you're working with do care. They are looking out for your best interests, and they're doing the work right there with you, which is really, really key to having people involved. And I think even as coaches, I remember when I was a young coach being told, you can't come down on people unless they know you care first. They have to have that relationship with you where they know you care about them as a whole person first before you rip them apart. And that is something that just feels like it's getting missed more and more across the board, is that sense that relationships really matter, and how do we build those before you actually need them?
Yeah, I think, one thing that I've always tried to do in my career is, and again, it sounds cliche, but you can either start with the answer no, or you can start with the answer yes. And I think if you can start with the answer yes, then you're going to get a lot more buy-in. And yes might not be exactly what the coach wants in the end, but if you can get to a yes where they're feeling a win in that, then there's, like you said, there's the buy-in. There's people understand that it's coming from a place of care, and understanding that the ask was for a reason, and helping them get there.
Yeah. Are there things that coaches can do? I'm thinking about mentoring coaches to manage what I call managing up. I have always thought, and I know you believe this too, that it's a two-way street. Somebody's bringing something up to you. You're always trying to start from yes, but I'd love to hear a little bit about sort of philosophy or I don't know, maybe even examples of where coaches that are managing up well, advocating for themselves well, and helping support the department well.
I think the first piece of advice I guess I would give is that everything can't be a fire. If you're a coach who's everything is an emergency, you're coming to your athletic director, you're coming to your sports supervisor, and like this is an emergency, we need to get it taken care of. Like at some point, you become the coach who cried wolf, right? And it's really hard for your administrator or your AD or whoever to understand what's actually important. And so I think you need to learn to pick your battles in a way, like what's actually important to you in your program, so that your AD knows that. Your AD knows where the non-negotiables are for you as a coach so that they can support you in those. Because asking for everything, sometimes it's like, okay, well, I'll ask for everything so I get a little bit, but that also comes across as just being needy. And so if you can think about it and you can say, yes, this is something, and I can tell when a coach has gone home, thought about it, woken up the next morning and they're like, yes, I need to talk to Andy about this, as opposed to someone who is like running to grab their email or their phone and saying like, I need this. Like that, it comes across. It comes across in the thoughtfulness of your request. It comes across in the thoughtfulness of why you're trying to do something. And so that would be an advice I give for managing up, is give your AD an opportunity to meet you there, and I think if you ask too much of them, it becomes really hard for them to be able to support you in everything that you need.
Yeah, that's awesome advice.
So bring me solutions, not just problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it when someone comes and says, this is my problem. This is what I think we should do about it. What do you think? As opposed to, this is my problem.
Yeah.
I'm the boss, whatever that means. But like, we're all in this together. And like, it's not my job to fix everything. That's where my biggest frustration will come in life, is like, if I'm viewed as like the guy who's got to fix it, as opposed to, can I support you in fixing a problem? Like, I don't always want to be the one who has to put every fire out. I literally love it when sometimes people come and say, this happened, I handled it, and let's move forward.
I think a lot of coaches really struggle with where that barometer is and measuring what is not an emergency to take to my administrator, what is something I want to keep them looped in on before it becomes an emergency, and what is, I'm going to keep this under the radar and worry about it and handle it myself because I don't want to bother them with that issue.
I think part of that is got to come across in the relationship you're building with your boss. It's got to be a running dialogue of like, what do you want to know about? It's no different than any relationship you have in life. Like, what do you want me to tell you about? What don't you want me to tell you about? And like, that's helpful. Like, I think it's being able to have that dialogue, just like you as a coach want to know, like, hey, if a parent calls, I want you to give me a heads up, right? Having those understandings in a relationship of where the lines are, so that you can have a healthy relationship moving forward with that person.
I think that's so key in making a successful program and a successful department is it becomes really apparent where there's good relationships. And the athletes see that the whole way through. The athletes see when the coach is not feeling supported by the administration, where there is a disconnect in that communication. It trickles the whole way through. So that managing and that leadership is so key that it's got to resonate through the head coach, the athletic department, but even then to the offshoots of your training staff, to your compliance if it's a college program, or your strength and conditioning staff. Those continual relationships and communication are essential for there to be success, because if there's not that breakdown in communication, it's just not going to work.
Andy, thinking about, and maybe this goes back to your Yale days, but for the assistant coach that's looking for their next job, what are the things that they can do from an administrative purpose to to stand out, to prepare themselves for their next role, things like that that you would look for an assistant coach that maybe wants to jump to the being a head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, and I say this to everybody, if they're asking for career advice, if they're asking for growth opportunities, there's no experience that's bad experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think the worst case scenario, you learn I don't want to do that again. And that's okay. But I think especially for assistant coaches, you can you're looking for people who are ready to raise their hand and say, I will take that on, because that shows that they have the work ethic and the desire and the care to move forward in their career. So like if you're an assistant coach and there's somebody and they're like, okay, we need someone to plan travel. Like, I got that. I'll do that. Because it also gives you a better understanding of how the program's running. It gives you access to budgets. It gives you access to other people in the athletic department who you can learn about how it works. So I would say any opportunity you can to be a resource for your program outside of the program itself is a really, really good thing, because it's going to help you understand how the greater whole works and give you that opportunity. I think it's also building relationships, not just with head coaches, but with administrators too. Like, I can tell you the people who I knew were going to be successful were the assistant coaches in the Ivy League who had a relationship with me, because they're like, you know what, I'm going to get to know Andy because Andy may one day need a head coach, and I want you to know that I'm a really good guy or girl, And I think you can tell the people who are out there hustling, and I think that shows, because ultimately, like, as we all know, a head coach is really about hustle these days. It's about, are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to recruit? Are you willing to build those relationships? Are you willing to do all those things? And that shows with how you conduct yourself as an assistant coach.
So what would a red flag be like where on paper a coach looks like they've got all the tools, but you decide to pass on them?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's, if you can't talk to me about your relationships with kids, or comfortable telling me like, these are the relationships I have with kids, then it's showing that you don't have them. And I think that's first and foremost. There are coaches who that's going to work, right? You're going to find a job, it's going to be okay. It's not going to work with me. And that's just the reality of who I am, and what works is that, I am, as we've talked about, it's always going to be student athletes first. So you're going to need to prove to me that you care about the kids, and it's not just about showing up and winning games and doing that. I think a big red flag is if you are already going into the process trying to figure out like what you don't,
Hmm.
because that
Ooh, that's a good
shows
one.
me right away that, like, I'm the type of person that nothing's below me. Like, you'll see me, and a lot of this is true of every New England boarding school AD there is, but like, you'll see me out wrapping extension cords as we get ready for a game and stuff like that, because that's what needs.
Moving hurdles.
Yeah, and like, it's about doing the job and doing what needs to be done. So one thing that's really not going to impress me is if you're like, a lacrosse goal needs to get moved, kids, go do it. Because when your athletic director's out there moving lacrosse goals before the game and you're not willing to do it during the game, like, it says a lot about who you are. If that's something that you're concerned about, don't show your hand, definitely, but also take into account, like what Mike was saying, we're growing boys and girls. So, or men and women in the college realm, and like, they're going to learn from you, and they're going to see, if coach isn't willing to do this, why am I willing to do this? And so that means a lot to me, for someone who's going to be willing to give all of themselves and not think that anything's too unimportant for them to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll add one on my language, not yours, Andy. My red flag was they were looking for the next job before they had this job. You do interviews long enough, you could sort of suss that out a little bit too. So that would have been one of my red flags as an AD, where I'm like, oh, they're already looking past before they even have this one.
Yeah, don't ever tell someone this is a 2 or 3 year stepping stone for you.
Yeah, yeah. We're not life partners, but
I want you to at least
with us.
pretend like you want to be here forever.
Very good. Very good.
Andy, this is something you and I have touched on a little bit. As you're looking at hires and you're looking at you're not just molding just young men, but you're molding young women too. You've got daughters, I've got daughters. We've talked about in length the importance of having other female mentors in this space. What advice would you have to female coaches out there that are looking to stay in coaching, to get in coaching, or looking to find that mentorship to help them make this profession sustainable?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, Taryn, you hit the nail on the head, is you have to have your family. Like, you have to have the people who you can trust in to talk about all the things that are struggling. You have to have your people that you are willing to confide in. And I'm understanding for a lot of our female coaches, like, that's not me, right? Like, I'm a 40 something year old white guy. Like, I'm not going to understand a lot of things that a female coach has to go through. And so it's about finding those people. And if you don't have those people, asking for help in finding those resources. I think people like you, Taryn, are incredibly valuable to female coaches, whether they're young or old, in terms of having somebody who understands what it's like to be a coach and to really want to win, but also to really want to be a mom and be a wife and all those things. And it's really okay. That is okay to do. And I think a lot of times people need to hear that from other people. The best thing I can do is to just echo that, is to say, like, I want you to be the best version of yourself. And that means being a really awesome coach. That means being a really awesome partner. That means being a really awesome mom, if that's the route that you go. But knowing that being a coach here at Taft or at Yale or whatever isn't limiting to what you can do with the rest of your life. And some of that, it means backing it up. When you have a coach who's like, hey, I'm going to stop practice early because I got to take my kid to the doctor, that's got to be okay. Like, if you're saying that that's the culture that you want, you need to then follow it up and say that is okay. And I think in a lot of ways that's giving the athletes in your charge permission to say, like, sometimes things are more important than what we're doing here too. And I want you to feel like you can come and talk to me about that too. Yeah. Because, like, I think there's so much pressure put on girls that they have to do all these things, and being able to have a female role model in their life who is saying sometimes it's okay to not do it. Sometimes it's okay to let the pressure off. We, in boarding school in particular, and Mike, this, like, our system is still built a lot of times on girls being multi-sport athletes, and knowing that, like, that's really, really hard, especially when you have an athlete who wants to be a college athlete in something else, but they're being asked to play 2 or 3 other sports here at campus, and understanding that, like, that's a lot to put on somebody, and understanding that, like, sometimes if you're a varsity basketball coach and you have a lacrosse player on your team, you have to say, go to the lacrosse showcase. And we're going to be okay for this weekend without you there, because that's what you're hoping the lesson for them is, like, you can pick things in life and it's going to be.
What's the advice you would give to administrators looking to support female coaches? Because none of this can happen without it being a joint effort from everybody involved. And that's where coaches sometimes need the most support, and the biggest allies is from their administrators. So what do you think would your advice be to other coaches, to other administrators, to helping increase the numbers as we're still struggling to get those numbers up to a level where they should be for females, having those female coaching mentors?
You have to be okay with allowing, whether it's a female coach or a male coach, you have to be okay with allowing them to be somebody away from your program. Like, you have to say, like, you can go be a spouse, you can go be a husband or husband or wife, you can go be a mother or father. Like, that's got to be okay. Like, you can't say these things, but it's also having clear expectations of, like, where that line draws, right? And, like, in saying that's okay, right? Like, I'm the first one to say, like, especially if you're coaching a varsity sport at Taft, like, I want your family to be a part of the program. But, like, when you're practicing, you can't also be watching your kids, because then you're not paying attention to the practice, right? So, like, we need to understand that there are limitations to what we can do. but you also have to be willing to work around those limitations to ensure that the coach can be the parent or spouse or whatever that they are needing to be in order to be successful for you.
All right, Andy, so for our closing segment, we're going last lap. Bell lap, here we go, rapid fire. Who's mentoring you right now? Not 10 years ago, but today.
I mean, I think one of them, and Mike mentioned this, I think we are incredibly lucky here at Taft to have a head of school, Peter Becker, and he is one who is willing to really get into the weeds with you and talk it through and wants to truly understand the job that you are being asked to do. And so I'm incredibly lucky to have that. And I think, it's funny, but as all of us as parents find out, like in some ways, like our own kids at home mentor us because like they teach you your limits real fast. And I think it's interesting to be able to be tested every day when you come home and know that like at the end of the day, no one at work's going to push me harder than my 12-year-old daughters.
Awesome.
Yeah. What's one habit that's genuinely made you a better leader?
And it gets harder in boarding school. But when I was at Yale, one of the things that was actually really good for me was having a 30-minute ride home or a 30-minute ride to work and being able to flip that switch. When I made this transition to Taft, I'll give my wife the credit in the world. She asked me, she's like, you got to ask yourself. She's like, in this job, are you going to live to work or are you going to work to live? I made the decision that I was going to work to live and I was going to do the job to make sure that I can be the best version of myself at home and in everything I want to do. The best thing I can do is when I come home, I really just want to be a husband and father. And I think, that's really important to me. And it allows me to wake up the next day and say, okay, now it's time to put my AD hat back on and go to work.
What leadership advice would you give a first-year coach or a new administrator?
That's a great one. I think it's immerse yourself in everything. Make sure that you understand if you're an administrator, make sure you understand every aspect of your athletic department. If you're a coach, it's make sure you understand every aspect of your program, because that mastery of that is going to be incredibly helpful for you as you are then able to navigate the problems that are coming.
Yeah. What's one book, podcast, person, or resource every coach should experience or you're listening to help you right now?
So it's funny. I have one that I watch it at least once a year, every other or twice a year. And if you haven't watched it, I watched the documentary Free Solo a lot. And it's funny because for those who don't know, it's the story of Alex Honnold and his free solo climbing without a rope of El Capitan in Yosemite. I'm fascinated by it. I think it's the most incredible thing a human body has ever done in the history of the world is to climb a 3,500-foot sheer rock face without a rope, knowing that if you slip one time, you're falling 3,000 feet below into the valley floor. But I think it's, as I've been watching it recently, like the thing that speaks out to me the most is he goes and he does this incredible thing. And then the next question he asks himself is, what's next? I'm not going to live by this one accomplishment I've done. I'm going to enjoy the process. It was a 2 or 3 year process of him preparing himself to do this. And it took one day to do it. And then it's like, okay, what happens next? Process is so much more important than outcome. He spent 2 or 3 years getting ready for one day. And you got to love it to do that. And I think that for me just jumps out every time. And it's something that always kind of centers me and makes me question, what's possible in life.
Love that. Andy, it's always a pleasure. Not only are you an incredible friend, but also a great mentor. And I know everyone in your department is very lucky to have you at the helm. And thank you so much for all you brought to the podcast today.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Sideline Ascent.
Be sure to like and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts on Spotify or Apple Music so you never miss an episode.
And stay connected with us on YouTube and Instagram. We love hearing what messages resonated with you or who you'd like to hear from next.
If this conversation hit home for you, share it with somebody who appreciates it, a friend, a teammate, or a coach.